What's up, everybody? Welcome to Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco. As many of you guys know, like if you've been following this channel, I was on the ground in DC during the eviction moratorium protests that were organized by AOC and Cori Bush, mainly Cori Bush. You know, AOC was she was a side character there, helping to amp up Cori Bush's message. And there were still some concerns that were raised and questions that were asked, like what the CDC and the Supreme Court, like what was decided was an extension of 60 days, so that to postpone people's evictions. After those 60 days are up, those people could still get evicted. And this doesn't do anything about canceling people's rents. And it doesn't do anything about, it leaves out 10% of the people who are about to face evictions. That's still 1.1 million families that were about to get evicted. And just to remind you guys about what happened on the ground, I'm gonna show you guys the clip of when I was there, and how when me and my friend Colin asked a question, they dismissed us. So I'm just going back to this old tweet that Fiorella put out. When I was on the ground, she said the squad celebrates their great victory, and B43 Franco asked AOC, will people's rent be forgiven? She says, we're going to figure that out. As he presses, Cori Bush plays music to drown him out as a crowd of mostly their supporters and paid workers cheer for their planned PR stunt. Will people's rent be forgiven? Let me zoom in here. Will people's rent be Will people's rent be forgiven?
None of that matters.
Will people's rent be forgiven?
We're going to figure that out.
Of course.
What are you going to do? So
I'll keep pressuring. Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. The CDC just announced an eviction moratorium, and what we're here is for our reasons known and unknown. So our reasons known was to make sure that we...
I still don't know what that means. Maybe you guys in the chat can tell me, but what does it mean when she says we're here for reasons known and unknown? Like, because I've been trying to figure that out for a long time, and I haven't seen a single explanation of what that means. Is it just like putting a bunch of random words that sound good together, like putting that together to give people hope? I don't know what that means. Please help me out in the chat.
Extended the moratorium. That's where you're...
This is only ceasefire. Ceasefire. This is not victory. People still owe money. People still owe money. People still owe money. No, this is only ceasefire. People still owe money. What are we gonna do in 90 days? You're acting like this is a victory when people still owe money. So I said 90 days at the time when it was actually 60 days. Hold your corporate colleagues accountable. They're giving money to Israel, an apartheid state, when they could be using that money to forgive people's rent.
Give it up for a minute.
So if you heard that, give it up for a minute, that was Medea Benjamin telling me to stop, even though one of my inspirations for doing this and calling out corporate politicians or just politicians in general who aren't helping us was her, when she would call out these war criminal neoconservatives, these Republicans from the Trump administration, when they would try to gaslight people about the reasons for why we have to fund Saudi Arabia, for going to war with Yemen, for us going to war with Syria and Iraq and all these other countries. I mean, there's no difference in this two-party illusion between the Democrats and the Republicans. Like, they're all complicit in helping out the same people, these corporate oligarchs. And so we should be questioning all of them. So it was really sad to see Medea Benjamin telling me to give it a rest. That's right. Then don't stop coming out. Keep showing up for 90 days straight. Then let's do it. Let's not stop. Let's not only rely on them.
But they are exhausted and we need to help them.
Then let's keep doing. Then we need to not rely on leaders.
Mic check. Mic check. Thank you all. Real quick, tensions are starting to escalate. Real quick. The overall subject here is we we can take a pause to appreciate the efforts that we've all
pause.
collectively put together and accomplished.
So that corporations can scheme in the meantime.
And that's the point that people need to understand is when they have these like minor ceasefires like this is the time that corporations take so that they can scheme and so that they can think about, all right, what can we do to make it look like we're helping the people when really you guys are helping us, the corporations. So that's what was going on during these past 30 days. Corporations were scheming.
Like the Congressman has said, the work is still not done, and that requires us to be here. Everyone keeps asking, what should we do now? We're going to keep here. We're going to stay here until the rest of the work is done.
We're not buying the theatrics. We're not buying the theatrics. No, I'm not one person. My man right there. We have 137 people watching. 130. Yes. People. Damn.
For a channel that's shadow banned, right? A small channel with almost 6,000 subscribers. I brought more people there on my phone than AOC and Cori Bush with millions of followers did. There on the ground. And so this was shared by Misty Winston, called it U.S. Supreme Court ends federal residential eviction moratorium. So I wanted to show this like right after that because I was warning about this, right? I was calling this out. I was like, what about the people who still owe rent? My friend Colin was asking, what about the 10% that are left out? They didn't care. What was most important for them is for them to look good to the audience. Like I said, like in past videos, these are actors and actresses, and they perform in front of this theater, like which are the cameras, and they want to make it seem like they're helping the people by being on the ground. I was here for like 4 days, like on these steps, when nothing efficient actually happens to help us out. They just kick the can down the road. And so to me, seeing a picture like this, like them celebrating when there was still people who were going to be evicted, there's still a bunch of people who got evicted during the pandemic, is absolutely disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting to see them celebrating like this when they haven't done anything. Like whenever things get done in this country, it's because of working class people that pressured the politicians to do something. And now these two are in the position of being politicians. And so they need to receive the pressure from us. They're not our allies. So then Cori Bush was saying we were outside. She was trying to act like she was outraged by what just happened. He said we were outside of the Capitol for 5 days, rain, heat, cold. If they think this partisan ruling is going to stop us from fighting to keep people housed, they're wrong. Partisan ruling, the banks, like these real estate agencies, all these corporations are like, they buy off both the Democrats and the Republicans. They're trying to make this. They're trying to create a boogeyman here to have us, think that it's all the Republicans' fault, when the Democrats were complicit this entire time for 18 months during this entire pandemic, these lockdowns. They knew something like this was going to happen. They had months and months and months to prepare. This is a bipartisan issue, not a partisan issue. It's not just Republicans. It's just that the Democrats want to pretend like they're helping you. Congress needs to act immediately. Yeah, for sure. You need to act immediately. What are you going to do? Like my friend Colin asked you, Cori Bush, what are you going to do for every unhoused or soon to be unhoused person in our districts? I mean, they knew this, and I was trying to let people know there when I was there on the ground. So I want to go back to my discussion with that young lady who was making fun of like how I was like, oh, you're the only one. Like I'm speaking out for homeless people, a bunch of people who didn't get to be there. Let's see. All right, it's right here.
Rely on them.
But they are exhausted and we need to help them.
Then let's keep doing. Then we need to not rely on leaders.
Mic check! Mic check! Mic check! Thank you all. Real quick, tensions are starting to escalate. Someone says real quick. The overall sentiment here is we can take a pause to appreciate the efforts that we've all collectively put together to accomplish.
So that court.
We saw that.
We're not. No, not one person. My man right there. We have 137 people watching.
130
Yes.
people. Damn.
For a small channel, what, you're gonna say I can't do this?
I didn't say you can't do this, but you're talking like me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's homeless people. There's people that owe rent. What are we gonna do about that? This is only a 90-day pause, and they know it. They don't. You saw how AOC said, oh, we'll talk about that later, because she doesn't have an answer now. Because she hasn't thought about it. Just like she waited for this for months. She waited for this for months, and then to do this last minute, she has a huge following. They were just like,
They didn't even know what to say to that. That's exactly right. They had months to figure this out. And you're telling me that they didn't know, like it wasn't going to extend a full 60 days. You're telling me that they didn't know that it was going to come down to, you know, trying to continue to keep kicking the can down the road. You're telling me they had absolutely no idea this was going to happen, that millions of people were going to be evicted. You know, as during the beginning of the lockdowns, people were like, their rents were accumulating. Nothing was being done to forgive people's rent. But let me go back to that Reuters article here that Misty shared, just to give you guys an update of what exactly the Supreme Court said. The U.S. Supreme Court ends CDC's pandemic residential eviction moratorium. The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday ended the pandemic-related federal moratorium on residential evictions imposed by President Joe Biden's administration in a challenge to a policy brought by a coalition of landlords and real estate trade groups. So they listen to those people, but they don't listen to, you know, us, the working class people who are suffering. The justices who in June had left it in place, a prior ban that expired at the end of July, granted a request by the challenger to lift a moratorium by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that was to have run until October 3rd. It clearly did not run until then. The challengers argued that the law on which the CDC relied did not allow it to implement the current ban. It strains credulity to believe that this statute grants the CDC the sweeping authority that it asserts. The court said in an unsigned opinion, if a federally imposed eviction moratorium is to continue, Congress must specifically authorize it. The court added, so why didn't Congress, the squad supposedly, who are supposed to be our saviors, who are supposed to be these progressives, why didn't they use their leverage to push their colleagues to go beyond just an eviction, an extension for an eviction moratorium? Why didn't they go beyond it and push to cancel to forgive people's rent? Why didn't they use their activism to make it a whole issue about homelessness in general? We have a homelessness crisis in this country. We have millions of people who are homeless. Why didn't they make it about that? Instead, they just made it about kicking the can down the road. And then people celebrate about crumbs. But it's specifically the people, like these people that you see here. These are all college students, interns, and staffers that don't feel the sense of urgency. They think that they're doing right, you know, by being there, but they don't understand the urgency. I guarantee you that all of them aren't about to face eviction. Like, they all have their parents that pay for their college. So then, with what Cori Bush said, I said, so the theatrics continue. What's next? You're going to start cutting people off with music and dancing the next time people call you out on celebrating false victories? Like, what are they gonna do? But like, they didn't want to answer quite like these concerns that people like me had, people like me and Colin and Max Blumenthal had. Instead, they just want to brush it under the rug and pretend like nothing bad is happening. Shout out to Unapologetics that Congress has known that millions were permanently behind on payments and would be evicted if they didn't pass legislation to cancel rent/mortgage. They've known about it for 18 months. Everyone facing eviction or currently homeless should be shaking shit up right now. I mean, that's what it has to come down to, is us hitting the streets and understanding that these politicians are not our allies. They're there to trick us. They're there to trick us with false senses of victory. Sneakerhead at Ehead said they got their photo op. They got their photo op, then went on vacation, fully knowing that this could happen. This is why we don't need them to protest. Leave that to the people. The lawmakers need to make the laws to help us. I mean, like this, when I was there the first night, this is what I saw. Like a line of these college students wanting to take pictures with AOC. If your main concern is about people losing their homes, like I couldn't care less about these politicians that, you know, like this is the job that they're supposed to do. We shouldn't be worshiping them or treating them as celebrities. But unfortunately, there are people that are indoctrinated into thinking that that's how they should treat these people.
Is it okay if I get like a question or two? Question two, what's the next steps? What are you guys going to do to pressure your colleagues? How are you going to pressure your colleagues? Why are you guys doing this last minute? Why weren't you guys doing this for months? That's it. So you just show up for a photo op and that's it. You're not actually going to fight in Congress. No, what is she going to do?
So there are people there that are like, yes, she is going to fight. Clearly she has not. And I'm like, we're not seeing it right now. We'll see what happens. But I mean, we're clearly seeing that they're caring more about campaigning for their next election cycle and building up a reputation with, you know, people as like these saviors so that they can get more votes and so that they can secure their position as a politician. These people are comfortable. I mean, my man Charles here, you know, pointing out how this is supposedly the land of opportunity, right? America, the land of opportunity, when, you know, we already have a homelessness crisis, but then in addition to that, it's about to get worse with more people losing their homes. Americans once had hopes and dreams of starting a business or buying a home and living free. Nowadays, people just hope the mandates don't cause their business to close. They lose their home because they can't pay rent due to a pandemic and take whatever freedom public health allows. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we are limited from reaching our full potential because we have all these limitations when it comes to our finances, like when it comes to us paying rent, when it comes to us paying off our student loans. What if we want a career change? What if we went to college and then we get a degree and then we got our first job and then we realize that that's not really what we wanted to do? And then we want to start our own business. Or, you know, we don't have the credentials and we have to study something else in order to get a different job. Because nowadays, people like employers expect bachelor degrees as a minimum. It's all by design. It's all by design to make us be obedient workers. So it's not the land of opportunity. At least not anymore. I don't know if it ever was. Comrade Misty said it would cost $20 billion to end homelessness in the U.S. We just shoveled another $21 billion to the military-industrial complex on top of the $714 billion we were already giving them. Why the actual fuck is anyone okay with this arrangement. The fact that our money is being used more to kill people in other countries while simultaneously killing people here as they're losing their homes, inundated with debt when it comes to medical bills, student loans. People have to eat unhealthily because they have to rely on cheaper food. And then they get autoimmune diseases or other health conditions, and then they have to rely on big pharma. You see how all these evil corporations are working together? All these issues are connected. Shout out to Mo, who I also saw on the ground in DC. Said Dems got to play hero and act like they wanted to extend the eviction moratorium all along, but those darn Republicans stopped them once again. This is all a game. They all on the same imperialistic, fascist, psychopathic side, and we are the ones who keep getting screwed. Another tweet by Unapologetic. I want everyone to pay attention to how the fraud squad and Bernie respond to the ruling on the eviction moratorium. If they don't have a planned forceful counter to end homelessness right now, we know for sure they were full of shit on the Capitol. I mean, I knew from the start that they were full of shit. But this is just adding more and more evidence to the people who aren't aware of this yet. To all those people that were telling me to calm down or were telling me, oh, what have you done? This is compiling more evidence to show them how these politicians are full of shit. So I wanted to show this. So after I left, like people were claiming that they were going to keep protesting Cory Bush and AOC, and their staffers were saying, oh, this isn't done. We're going to keep fighting. We. But clearly they're just talking about the people that they were looking at because they didn't come back. And Max Blumenthal went later the next evening to see who was still protesting at the U.S. Capitol steps. And there were barely anybody there. There was barely anybody there. So it's not over at the U.S. Capitol. 3 housing activists were removed by Capitol Police Department from the steps tonight because members of Congress were no longer present. So they allowed people to protest just because there were politicians there. Now, is that really a real protest? A real protest is supposed to cause discomfort, not when the ruling class gives orders to the police, their henchmen, to stand back and allow the protest to go on. Just because these politicians are there. So to me, it seems like an entire operation. So Max goes on to say, but they are keeping the sit-in going until everyone is protected from eviction. So here are some of the people. I recognize some of these people when I was there on the ground. This is the guy who came up to me and was like telling me, he's like, hey, why are you filming people? I mean, what do you expect, man? Like, if you go out to a protest, there's going to be people with their cameras showing what's happening. I mean, you're not mad at how there's cameras everywhere and how, intelligence is surveilling all of us anyway, especially in the belly of the beast, like in DC. This guy, like in the live footage that I just showed you guys, he was also there. This is the girl that was telling me, that she thinks that what the squad members are doing is admirable. She also ran up to Max Blumenthal in one of his videos. This is the guy who was like, all right, we're just taking a moment during this pause, to acknowledge this victory. This is the guy who I had, who was debating me in one of the videos. His name was, I think his name was Dylan. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and that's it. And you see these fences? They gated it up. People weren't allowed to protest anymore on the Capitol steps. Let me show the next picture here. Completely empty. Completely empty. So let me ask you guys, do you think that was a real protest then, what AOC and Cory Bush did? And this ties in with what happened recently and also what happened in January 6th, like how they call people domestic terrorists, and that manufactures consent for us to gate up the entire, the Capitol and the White House. Like, you can't go as close to the White House as you used to anymore. Like, things are gated up in DC because of what happened in January 6th. You can check out my earlier videos that goes over what happened and how that all looked like it was controlled opposition. How all of that looked like an op. And then Sophie Orella shared this picture here. This is from the Department of Homeland Security showing potential terror threats, opposition of COVID measures. That's another issue that I discuss a lot on Rockfin exclusive videos. Claims of election fraud, belief Trump can be reinstated. 9/11 anniversary and religious holidays. So around September, like if we want to protest for the eviction moratorium, if we want to protest homelessness, like it will be coinciding with the 9/11 anniversary protests. Will they be calling us domestic terrorists? I mean, it's anti-capitalism, and they believe anti-capitalists are terrorists or domestic terrorists. So they do everything that they can to have these fake protests happening to give people a false sense of victory, of accomplishment, of success. And then when real protests happen, they do everything they can to shut it down or to paint us as these domestic terrorists. We should be more outraged than what we're currently feeling right now. Like I said in the beginning of the stream, get your pitchforks, get your torches. There's going to be more and more people that are going to be living in the streets. And unfortunately, the majority of the people in this country don't feel a sense of urgency until these things happen to them personally. But the best thing that you can do is show people videos like this that go over, some of these truths and how these politicians are actors and actresses, and they're going to fake as if they're trying to help us when they're actually helping their party leadership in the case of these quote unquote progressives. And everybody else is going to, directly help their corporate donors.